Good evening and welcome to the special City Council meeting of Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. This meeting is now called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Wood,
Yes. Here.
Councilmember Ayers,
Here.
Councilmember Milan. Here. Councilmember Moffett. Here. Councilmember Albrecht.
Here.
This meeting has been called so that we can discuss the options that were provided to us for an interim city manager. We were given five different possibilities, all with pluses and minuses. Would somebody like to open the floor, or would you give me you need to give a summary?
Mayor, I went through all of them, and I kind of think that there's someone in there that was our city manager at one point, and I think he knows our system, he knows everything about Clawson, and I would suggest Mr. Haberman.
You were on council when Mr. Haberman was here, correct? Mr. Haberman came highly recommended from the HR.gov organization. There wouldn't be any travel or lodging expense to select Mr. Haberman. In addition, I would agree that he can come in here and instantly help us out. He's available immediately. I did go back and look at the record to find out why he left. And there really isn't much out there except for this statement that he submitted his resignation to the city of Clawson on November 16th, 2009, citing personal reasons. After almost 4 years of city service, the city of Clawson thanks Mr. Haberman for his service to the city. Mr. Mark Pollock, Finance Director, has agreed to accept the position of interim city manager. And I know that Mark had said nothing but glowing comments in regard to Mr. Haberman's leadership at that time. Anything else want to?
So I reviewed them all also, and I ranked them, and I think three of them, one of the things that it's important that we have is someone who can address administrative functions. There's kind of get in and do some of the things. I know that there's just administrative work that needs to be done. And so I felt like three of them were too heavily just strictly financial. Mr. Haberman was my number two, but unfortunately my number one is currently in Seattle, Washington, which is a bit of a commute. And so we would need to pay, there'd be a period of time before we could get my first pick here in place, because he does currently have a job. I guess he's looking to relocate to the Michigan area, but there would just be a delay in our ability to put him in place. And Mr. Haberman was my number two, which, thinking of it as simply an interim person so that we can sort of take a beat and do a copious, extensive search for our permanent person. It seems like an interesting idea, at least, that we would be able to, having some knowledge of the city. Seems somewhat prudent.
And I wanted to address Jeffrey Watson, who's from Seattle, Washington. He required to give 2 weeks' notice to his current employer and move. However, I did speak to the organization again, and he's somebody that we could consider long-term if that's something we want to do. So not having him as the interim does not exclude him from the potential candidate list for a long-term city manager if that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see him to at least be talked to based on his resume. I think he has, you know, checks a lot of the boxes that we're looking for, has extensive experience and educational background, certifications, but, you know, we need something in interim first before we can really start putting a lot of focus on the long term.
Let me summarize some of these. John Lamorato, I spoke with him today. He's available, but his schedule request is to not exceed 2 days a week. He is local, so we wouldn't have to pay travel expenses for him. There's a Mr. Stalker. He would be available a week to 10 days, and he is in Escoda, so we would be incurring lodging and travel costs during the week of his stay. And Natasha Henderson, who's currently in North Carolina, and she's currently not working, but to get her from North Carolina would be a week to 10 days, and so we'd be paying the travel and possibly lodging. He was not sure if she had lodging available when she arrived here because she was from the Flint area originally.
I would also say that those three people, well, whereas they had a wealth of experience that was really focused on financial versus sort of staff development and, you know, some of the other non-financial aspects that we really need addressed.
I think that if we're looking for an interim person, I am absolutely not in favor of paying for lodging or relocation or anything else. I think we've incurred enough costs, and we would be short-sighted to add any additional costs to our residents at this point. I would like to see someone, I'm less concerned about their administrative capacity at this point. I think pulling someone out of that position who has handled the administrative and the financial, I think ideally the financial portion is the most important part for us to address, because the administrative portion honestly will run itself for a little bit of time. We wouldn't have to be worried about that as much. And the interim person would not be given much responsibility to shape up anything that's currently existing. So I don't think that's necessarily, it's important, but not necessarily foremost important. I think we're jumping the gun on all of this a little bit in just looking at 5 or 6 resumes that we get out of the sky. We have not stated at all what our priorities are for this position. I think that's kind of going backwards a little bit. And I do like Mr. Haberman for many reasons, but I'd also like to know some history on him from being here before making a final decision on that.
I would tend to agree with Councilwoman. I don't know that I'm ready to appoint an interim this evening. At the very least, I'd like to speak to a couple of people. I don't know that we posted anything anywhere to receive any resumes. I mean, it is. Ideally, it would be 12 to 16 week appointment. I do know that we need to get somebody here quickly. I believe city staff has been working with our outside accountant on a lot of our finances. I know Mr. Pollock was working with her fairly regularly, so she has provided some services there as well during this time. So I like the idea of Mr. Haberman. There's a lot of benefits there from just knowing our geography and our people. I'd like to at least speak with him. If he resigned citing personal reasons, I want to understand if, so when they send us these resumes, have they spoken with these folks about where they're sending their resumes? Is Mr. Haberman comfortable stepping back in here in this role?
When I called today to confirm that was the case, that all the candidates that they sent are available and interested, he said that they were. certainly, and I said, just because this happened so quickly, people have enough time to get them in here for interviews. Certainly, I said that if we narrow it down, that Mr. Earl would reach out to the individuals and let them know that we want to call them. And do an interview.
So it's pretty standard when you hire someone for a contract position, they don't just send a resume without the person's information. They talk to someone about the position. They're not going to send you 12 resumes for a contract position. They're going to do some of that weeding out for you. Plus, there's a different kind of person that's going to be interested in something contract. They have to be at a place in their life where either some are retired or whatever that they're going to be. So I think that finding a huge pool of people willing to work a contract position, the only reason the Washington guy was willing to leave his current job was because his wife was living here, so that's an incentive, right? So, I mean, the number of resumes doesn't concern me. Having had hired for contract positions in my career before, this is kind of how it goes. And you look for someone who can fill your immediate need, and then you can turn your attention sort of to something more permanent. So we're not going to get a ton of resumes to consider for this purpose.
Although, given another week or so, we may get additional resumes. I also do hiring, and I know that they come in floods at certain times, and there are different sources out there that perhaps we've not tapped, and I just believe there could be more. Not that there's anything wrong with maybe a couple of them, but again, I think if we're going to limit it to this group, Mr. Haberman has the plus for me.
I do like the fact that you can hit the ground running, and I believe that we have accountants that are going to be coming in the near future, and I do like the fact that he's familiar with those accounts. So what's in the posting and waiting, what's your timeline on, you think that this should be filled?
I don't have a timeline. I feel like I can't say anything nice, so this whole thing was just such an abrupt and quick incident, and I think for us to act abruptly and quickly in filling this would be an error on our part. So I don't know what my level of comfort is. I can just tell you it's probably not just this right here. I think we're limiting ourselves too much.
I think something to consider, though, is the fact that we have our chief of police acting city manager. It's not necessarily his acumen to conduct those responsibilities, and I think that some consideration needs to be paid to get an interim person in so that he can focus back on his stuff and we can focus on getting something more permanent.
I guess I was thinking, because it's a temporary, it's actually being 10 to 12 weeks, and then sending out an RFP so that we can have
Pick a
company to do our executive search, and while doing that, then council could do, as you said, to define what we're looking for that permanent position. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We need to define that. And define that with the executive company and picking them but based on RFP and what services and costs and those sort of things.
Definitely, to that end, we need to come up with, we don't have a reasonable job description for the position, the long-term position that we're looking to fill. We don't know exactly what it looks like, what the structure is, but we do have, there's a hole in the dike right now that we need to fill. And then we can move on and have some more constructive conversation about what we want it to look like going forward, important aspects for someone that we hire that they have and bring to the table.
I think for the interim right now, we need somebody to run the place for a couple 3 months, and that'll give us some time to sit back and check out some better qualified people. Maybe somebody just pops up.
Is the right fit.
Like you said, we can do our RFP for a search firm. We can, as a group, decide what our our job description is going to look like, what we're looking to fill, what we want, what's important to us, what's important for the city moving forward.
And what skill set is it important? I mean, the city is at the cusp of great things. And we want to make sure that we take all that into consideration. Now, Mr. Albrecht, would you, talking to two of these people help, or would you prefer Ms. Milan's recommendation that we post something and get additional candidates?
Well, I mean, if there's a majority this evening who are ready to appoint somebody, I don't know if we, you know, it's the majority of the rules, so I'm not, that is what it is. But there is there's a balance here. We do need somebody quickly. You know, I don't know, a search in this time frame. You know, maybe we just need somebody to fill the gap for the moment.
Could we have another meeting in the short term to invite this Haberman person to, you know, allow us to have a conversation with him, answer some questions, that sort of thing? You know, quickly, not in a week, maybe.
He's available tomorrow.
Oh, there's a tree lighting tomorrow.
So he's available to the city immediately. So whatever time frame we need to talk with him he's available.
Giving credibility to Mr. Albrecht's comment about, let's talk to him. I mean, can we talk to him Thursday? And then, you know, if everyone's happy with that, it's, you know, theoretically, it's not any loss of significant time, so, because we start tomorrow realistically, we start at the end of the week, right? We're starting.
May I ask, what are the immediate concerns for filling this position immediately? What are the concerns, as opposed to waiting a week or two?
Our acting city manager would really appreciate somebody who can see the types of things that are coming to him are he's being inundated, and from what I understand, it's been difficult to decide where they should go. And that's my sense. He's filled in the past during vacations, but
I understand you would be capable to make financial decisions, but as far as just administrative, other than addressing the initial concerns people have due to the abruptness of the whole change in the city, I can't imagine there's so many things that would come up
I
that
think
would be
with the
change in everyday operations.
the CDBG grant, he's got a timeline on it, and so there's that. And with Mr. Haberman has worked with grants. He did when he was here before. And the accountants are coming next week to do an audit. And so that's not Chief Jason's specialty. And those are the things that I'm seeing immediately. But now, we move away.
I think we definitely need to speak with someone and not just make a decision off of a resume.
Could we speak a little louder, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay. Continue, as we said.
Well, do we close this meeting without a decision regarding that? I can reach out to Mr. Earl and see if and when Mr. Haberman and another is available, if we so choose.
Well, where else would we obtain resumes for this role? Is there anywhere else that we would consider?
Well, you can post, like, you can post a real resume, you can post with, I'm opposed to paying a huge search fee for this position. I will tell you that right now. I know what it costs to hire people, and we don't do it at the company I work for because you have no guarantee past that 90 days, and we're not in the business to support other businesses like that. It's a waste of money. And I don't look for a city manager every day. I applied for city manager jobs 20-some years ago, so I know they're out there. I know how, I know they're out at they're in different places, but even MML charges a lot of money for you to find someone. And I'm not saying we don't want someone, we want someone qualified, we want someone good, but we've had a week. I don't know how much effort has been put into this. I know I put none in it, so I can't say anything, but I just don't want to sell us short on anything. Again, I just don't think it's fair. So it's not fair to the city, to the people who work here, to the residents. It's just not fair.
So I guess I'm looking at them as two different issues, an interim person under 12 weeks, and then a permanent person. And so there may not be a search fee, maybe there is, maybe you just post it out there and see what we get. But for me, it's a separate decision than the interim guy. And, and I understand, we have, we need to be conscientious of the city's money.
Well,
Which is why I'm not a fan of any of the options that we're looking at paying any lodging costs. I do not support that option. So for me, the two options were Mr. Haberman and Mr. Lamorato. But Mr. Lamorato only wanting to work at best 2 days.
So I'm missing 1 day a week if he's supporting. And they only work 4. So
They work 4, but he said, at most 2, so that may mean some weeks it's 1. Now, I did go out on the MML website, and this John was the only one local that was available. Talked to them, and they said that they just encourage retired city managers and those that have availability to post their information. So there was about 7. And while I was at when I talked to them, they said that according to what they have, there aren't a lot of city managers available for this sort of
It's the
thing at this time.
interimness that, and we might be able to come up with a whole different plan if you're looking for the permanent person, but again, someone who's willing to work a short-term assignment is you almost have to have someone who's seeking contract work. And that's just the nature of what we need right now, is someone who's willing to work a short-term assignment. So,
And Haberman's been sent all over the state. He just came back from Adrian, I believe last week, which is why he's available. His job at Adrian just finished up, or his interim position at Adrian just finished up. Well, I guess, does someone want to make a motion, and we'll see where it goes?
So I move that we seek to schedule a personal interview for the city council, mayor, and public with Mr. Haberman as soon as practicable to discuss the possibility of him filling the interim position.
Support.
Roll call, please.
If I might, I do have a question. So if for some reason in our discussions with Mr. Haberman, we determine that he's not the right fit or the right person, do we react at that point? Or are there enough people here comfortable with him that?
I don't know anything about him. I know nothing, but I think that we have the conversation, and there's a council meeting the following Tuesday. Then, if we don't feel comfortable saying yay or nay in that environment, but we do need to have a pretty tangible plan B, because Thursday is the end of the week. It's the holidays. It's going to be hard to get a hold of people. It's going to be harder to find people who are willing to move or take an interim position, or a plan to have. We need to, for this type of candidate, we're not gonna get a huge pool to pick from, so we need to act quickly on what we think is going to be best. And that means, I mean, we weeded out other people, but we need to find, you know, we need to get relief for the acting city manager. There's stuff that we need to take care of in the short term.
See, I was here when Mr. Haberman was here, so I've spoken to him in the past, and actually spent the time in asking some people around town that were here when he was here, and what their opinions were, and they had nothing but good things to say. Again, there's no documentation from a council standpoint on why he left, except for the statement regarding personal reasons. And so there's no reviews available to us, and all the individuals that I inquired about, the only thing that anybody said was he talked a lot and told stories. That was consistently the first thing out of people's mouths, is he talked a lot and told a lot of stories. So I don't.
It's valid that the sooner that we get an acceptable solution in place for the interim, the more time and energy we have to spend in formulating our plan for a long-term solution. And there is a lot of steps above and beyond posting it. Like I said, I think we need to have some pretty concrete job descriptions in place and really identify some key skills and characteristics that we're looking for. We need to decide, you know, if we're going to split the job or keep the job together. You know, it was allocated 2 buckets of money anyhow. We have a lot of decisions about the way forward. So this appropriate, you know, fill the dike, put a Band-Aid, whatever analogy you want to use, to get us to a place where we can take that beat and make a good plan going forward.
Because there hasn't been a job description for that position ever.
No.
So now's the time to do that.
Yeah, I definitely want to confirm with Mr. Haberman that whatever personal reasons that he felt were important to leave the city have been cleared up. So
I think it's wise.
now with your motion, we haven't determined a date and time yet, correct?
No, as soon as practicable. I think that's what I said. Because I like it word.
I could reach out to them tomorrow, and we could do, with 18 hours, we could do a Thursday meeting, if everybody's available to do
Howard's not
that.
available on
Oh,
Thursday.
Howard's not available to do that.
Sorry.
Are you available, Paul, Thursday? I think everyone knows Howard's available.
Well,
I have a hospital procedure I have to have done Thursday, so that's the reason I'm missing it.
We'll just come to you.
we can do a speaker. We could come in there again.
Leave the watch you guys here.
So I guess tentatively on Thursday.
Is Victoria available?
One thing to say about Rich Haberman is that he did get along with everybody in the city as far as the businesses and stuff like that. And I don't recall us ever having a problem financially with it. That's what he did. Of course, Mark was there at the time too. So,
So I need to make the call tomorrow and see if I can
Okay,
set it up
do
to
roll
Thursday.
call.
Pardon me?
Okay, do roll call.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ayers,
yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Wood.
Yes. So, do we need to discuss number 5 as a separate item, or have we discussed it within the other discussion adequately?
Can we each take the assignment to seek out other opportunities for a search firm or investigate? I mean, even to post a job on any website, like a career builder monster is gonna cost us money. You know, I mean, we need to, so I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think that tonight we can decide what our way forward is, but if we all commit to doing some investigation or coming with concrete ideas with costs and information associated with the variety of search avenues that there are for a permanent city manager, then we can talk about it in more tangible ways when maybe next time. I mean, because we've talked about doing it ourselves versus hiring someone, what an RFP would look like, how long an RFP, I don't know how many search firms are out there that specialize in municipal positions, because if we're gonna get a search firm, we should get someone who specializes in it, who knows, and, you know, there's the whole, you know, being able to tap into passive candidates versus candidates that are willing to answer emails or ads that some people can't do by posting a job. I mean, it's a whole body of discussion about doing a search, not to mention any search firm is going to ask us for a job description and what we're looking for, and as we've said, we don't have a job description. So I think we have a lot of homework to do before we make some real decisions about what our search forward is. And I think that we all of us need to, you know, do some Google searches on our own, gather some data, and come with some real concrete proposals about how we approach it.
Which is, I think, you know, the 10 to 12 week
Right.
process is.
Right.
So, you know, for me, it's along with everything else, if the search firm is used, I'd want to do an RFP for that.
And we even need to even know, like I said, how many recruiting places are out there that specialize in that. I don't know that, but.
Well, I mean, but I'm guessing if you put it out there in those sites, just like we did with our planning
Oh,
or
yeah,
anything
that could
else,
be
you just,
great.
you know, you put it up on the
Different
MML, you put
places,
it up
yeah.
on the, I think there's a City Manager Association website as well, so you put it out there in those places.
Yep.
So, you know, have homework, nothing else, job description.
Is that,
Well-
so we'll work on a job, each of us will work on a job description, is that?
Well, so that begs the question, are we looking for one job description or are we looking for two? Because, you know, I know there's concern about it being two positions, but it's two budgeted positions. Because the former city manager is being paid out of both buckets, so there's.
If there was, yes, they
Right,
were
although he held
allocated
two
differently.
positions,
The
right.
finance portion of his salary was allocated to certain sets of buckets, and the city manager portion of his salary was in other buckets. So
Right.
it was because of him wearing both hats, why the salary was what it was.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
But if we add another position, we are also incurring additional costs because we'll have additional benefit costs, other employee costs that are substantial as well. So we would have two executive positions, which are not going to be inexpensive, and we're going to have two benefit packages as opposed to this one benefit
I
package.
believe the finance position originally was about $45,000.
That's a clerk. If you want to pay, if you
No,
want a
that was-
$45,000 finance person, you're getting a clerk. You're not
No,
getting an
but
accountant.
we had a one and a
or
half, we
someone
had a
professional.
person doing two jobs. So, I mean, so if we were to have, split it into 1.5 jobs, have the financial position be a part-time job, because it wasn't like one person was effectively doing two jobs, it's physically impossible, right? I mean, so if there's a way to, you know, I mean, we need to look at the substance of the duties and responsibilities and where we want the focus to be, and maybe the financial position is more of a part-time type of position. Because we had, I mean, we didn't have two people, we had one person doing two jobs, so the time was split.
Or multiple responsibilities, because you can, any one person can handle any one responsibility under the same hat. I have, when you couldn't even count how many responsibilities I have and different, you know, leadership roles I have in my organization, because I work for a small organization. So on any given day, I'm a purchasing manager, I'm an HR manager, I am a business development manager, I'm an executive assistant, I clean the kitchen, I'm whatever, I need to be at that place. They're all substantial, but it's all under one salary. And my responsibilities are taken care of based on immediate need, which is I'm sure what most people do. That's what I'm assuming Mark had done under his position. You do the finance portion when finance portion is important. You do the management portion when the management portion is important, and it's doable if you have someone who's checking your responsibilities and you have a clear set goals. And that's something we can do. And I'm not saying we don't need two positions, but I would rather have my roads fixed than hire another person. That's what I would like
to that end, I agree 100%. We need a roads fixed, so we need someone who can do strategic planning, who can do a strategic budget, who can apply for grants, who can focus on the whole spectrum of financial duties that need to get us to that place. We are not in that place. We don't have money set aside for roads. We're not strategically planning. We're not applying for grants, probably because a lot of other duties to focus on. So if we had someone that was just their whole acumen. I have a lot of things that I do at work too, but there's things that I do better that I'm skilled at. So let's get someone who's skilled at just the things that job title entails, so we can focus on those things and move forward. And we have an opportunity here to, just like, like the Phoenix Rises, we have an opportunity to reinvent and craft a new future. We had stuff happened, but we can create a new future here. And so let's take this opportunity to take a beat and think about what we want the future to look like. Do we want someone who can do all that financial stuff for us, and someone who can, make sure that citizen complaints get answered within 24 hours and do all the kinds of things that our citizens expect from our city offices? And let's have job descriptions for everyone, and let's have a performance appraisal system, and let's do all the things that someone with just the skills for a manager could do and grow and flourish those departments. I think that's something we have the opportunity to look at that, and it would be remiss of us to not take this opportunity to craft a really great way forward.
We definitely need to look at this.
I know we've been asked, where is the money coming from? And that's a fair question. Our 2018 and 2019 budget, our fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th. Our budget this year has a projected surplus of $103,160. I'm not saying we need to spend that, but it's, when people ask where's the money coming from, we have a budgeted surplus this year. Unfortunately, it's been rough for Clawson financially for a number of years due to the housing market downturn and the Headley Amendment, which prevents property taxes from rising too quickly, which as a resident is a benefit in some ways, but at the same time it has suppressed our revenue. And fortunately this year we do have just over $100,000 budgeted as a surplus. So we do have this opportunity, fortunately, to utilize that for this. So.
Is that an actual number, taking all expenses into account?
That was the number that, from what I could tell, that was the number that we approved as our final budget.
So,
Open the floor to public discussion. Done with number 5?
So when we talk about process, I just want to be clear that I know what my responsibility is here and what is expected of me. Are we writing job descriptions coming out of this, or are we scheduling a workshop in the future to discuss job descriptions? Are we going to create an RFP for a search company?
I say we need to do a workshop to discuss our job description so that we're all here. And in addition, I would like to look into all avenues to include an RFP for a search company. That doesn't hold us to selecting one of those and going that route, but just so that we know what our options are.
So do we have to write an RFP in order to post it, or can we just post, can we just post to get information to find out what the companies are?
Well, I would think you would just post it on, to find out what services they offer and what the cost associated with
So
those.
we just like post a question, or?
Well, similar to like in the planning.
But it doesn't have to be it's exhaustive.
I guess that's what I'm
Because
asking.
you can say this, we're looking at City of Clawson, such and such size, location, blah, 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 is looking to fill a position or positions such as, and then you give it to them, and then they come back and they tell you all of their.
So it's just a blurb, it's not a whole
It
6
doesn't
page
have
thing.
to be
Okay.
And you wouldn't need to like have the job description right at that time, because they're just gonna tell us what the cost of their services is, and it's really,
Just to gather how many companies are out there. Okay, so do we need a motion to do that?
I believe so.
We post
But are we ready to do that? I don't know whether we're,
Well,
yeah, I guess we are.
I guess we're ready to ask the general question, who does this, right? And that's really our question.
Typically Mike.
Who does this,
typically
right?
Mike has been writing the RFPs.
Okay, and he's off, but Victoria's really smart, and she used to be a writer. I mean, we're really just, like Paula just said, we just want to know what entities provide this kind of services, what's your, present your costs and your timelines.
Well, I guess I would like to, we have a motion to do that, charge Victoria to do that in Mike's absence, and she can forward that rough draft to our city attorney and have him take a look at it and make sure that anything that needs to be included is.
I also wanna, I think we do need to decide whether or not we are searching for a manager who is a finance director as well. I do know that our former manager spent a lot of time doing finances, and I think that that was helpful for a long time, but I think that at some point that may have been a detriment. And so I, as it sits now, I am of the opinion that we do need those two positions. But I wouldn't want us to hire a finance director. I think we should hire a city manager who then would fill the.
Determines what's needed and the type of hours and things like that. Because somebody would be reporting to him or her, so they know what they need, depending on what skill set they need assistance with.
So I move that we ask the administration to post a RFP for solicitation of companies that provide services for search of municipal positions such as the city manager. Making it up here.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Just as a point of discussion. So I would hope that we would have a chance to review the RFP, right? It's
We emailed.
typical, right?
Did we vote on, we voted on the planning commission?
Mhm.
But we would be able to do that Tuesday. We have a Tuesday meeting, right? Or is it Tuesday?
Vote on what?
The RFP, so if we were to write up the RFP, vote on it Tuesday, then it could be posted on
Wednesday.
Wednesday with, like, and is a 2-week timeframe reasonable for them? I mean, how long is it, they check that all the time? I don't know what the site is where we're posting it.
Do you have any knowledge
You
on
can get stuff.
2
It
weeks?
depends on the company. You can put whatever timeline you want in there.
When we posted the planning.
We're not asking for anything, sorry, we're not asking for anything difficult, we're asking for company information, which everyone has.
That
I
is
just want to
brochure.
cast the biggest net and make sure that we ask
We can
as many
post it again
places.
if we don't get anything back. We could give a week, if time is of the essence, see what comes back within a week. By then, we perhaps could formulate some better ideas and know what we're doing, and then take their information and build from there. And there's nothing that says you can't do it again or broaden your scope.
To that, and I know Mike's involved in a lot of like professional associations and that kind of stuff. I don't know if you're involved in them also, but is that a place where we could like post to solicit information about other places to post for an RFP like that too?
I believe so. I can
Okay,
find out.
so we wanted, the point, we want as many opportunities to solicit as many companies as is practicable.
Is Tuesday a reasonable request for something like this?
It could be done.
Let us know if it can't.
Okay.
I know you're running solo this week, so
Yeah.
do what you can, and if you can't get to it, let us know.
Okay.
Roll call on that?
Yes.
Are we ready for it? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Milan?
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett?
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Woolley?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Okay. Now open the floor to public discussion. If anybody has anything they'd like to
I
share.
have a couple things. First off, it's painfully obviously that Mr. Pollack was asked to step down, not doing so much voluntarily. In the city charter 4.10 says that the city council mayor will put into the council journal meetings the reason why the city manager was asked to step down. I was wondering when you're going to do that, because I have seen nothing in writing in any meeting minutes or anything that has been posted so far that give that answer. And that's a quote from the city charter.
I understand, but I guess my question to you is, why do you feel that way? Mr. Pollack chose and elected an option within his contract, and as council, we honored that request.
I feel that way because the way it was handled, the quickness of it, some of the statements or lack thereof statements by people regarding this. I understand there was a separation agreement negotiated in private with attorneys, and I know there's some attorney-client privilege on that. But if there was anything driven by the city council or the mayor to get him to leave, the city charter says you must give that reason in writing in the journals of the city council meetings.
I don't know if you saw, the timeline in the week that Mr. Pollack left was on Tuesday. Mr. Pollack was asked to meet with council on Wednesday evening. Mr. Pollack requested that to be a closed session, and Mr. Pollack said that he would have an attorney present.
Yeah, I understand.
At 12:30 on Wednesday, Mr. Pollack told us that he was not coming to the meeting and he didn't care if it was an open or closed session. Shortly after that, Mr. Pollack then responded that he was going to select the separation agreement available in his contract. There was, that evening, because there was a closed session, when Mr. Pollack rescinded his request and said he didn't care if it was open or closed, that meant that the council's meeting was canceled. I sat out here at City Hall from 7 to 7:25 to make sure there was no meeting. There was no meeting of council, no vote of council, decision or debate. So I guess I don't,
So
and I'm
basically what
bound
you're saying
by.
is that it was purely Mr. Pollack's idea to leave the employment of the city.
I gave you the timeline, that's exactly the timeline.
Okay. Second of all, in the replacement of him, you should have started this process of replacing him as soon as you knew he was leaving, not waiting several weeks. You really should take a lesson from the other elected board in the city, it's the Board of Education, on replacing your key employee. We immediately, upon knowing that there was going to be a vacancy, we sent out a letter to all the firms in the state of Michigan that support looking for new school superintendents, asking them for the cost of their work, which included finding interim and a permanent. We had that information within a week of knowing we were going to have to replace the superintendent, not trying to figure out what to do a couple weeks later. So you need to look at it. We got 5 resumes for an interim superintendent. We as a board narrowed it down to 2, brought them in for public interviews to determine multiple candidates, not one, and hoping it goes well and then maybe have to schedule another one. You really should look at that, have things covered before you move forward. And we also got input from all the employees and the city for determining the job description and profile of the candidate we wanted to make sure all stakeholders had input into that. I think you should take some time and review that whole process and understand how it worked and look at the superintendent we got through that process before you decide on how you move forward. So everybody in this city is taken care of, not just the 5 people sitting at the desk there.
I will say that I would agree with you. It would have been nice to have more planning time. When Wednesday, Mr. Pollock made that selection, I made a call on Thursday.
Yeah, this-
So I made the call in as soon as I could.
These discussions you're having tonight should have been that same night that you accepted the separation. You should not have waited any time else. Should have been part of your agenda.
Unlike-
Added to it that the day you knew you were going to accept.
The school board has
separation.
different charter rules. We are not allowed to have meetings without 18-hour notice.
We're not allowed to have them without 48 hours notice, so.
Well, I think
So
the charter said as
we-
long as it's an emergency that, and you let most of the people know.
We have to have 48 hours. We have more time than people know, so we have to act quickly. You have less time, but as you can see here, compared to the last meeting you had, very few people came because very few people saw the notice. I understand that that's your charter, but it's not necessarily fair to the community when you're giving 18 hours notice.
We just got the resumes and literally got the resumes and had to make sure that this room was available. So we really
I
did it
understand.
as soon as possible, and I apologize for the short notice, but I thought it was more important to have the meeting than to give a longer notice, and Mr. Harris wouldn't have been available after
Yeah.
Thursday, so.
But you're talking about now having another one on Thursday. And again, very little notice. It's going to be less than 48 hours notice for most people to be able to attend. And just, you need to take into account the people of the city, not just your own schedules and agendas. And please make sure that you consider everybody in the future.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you give your name?
And it's Michael Frank, 1333 North Selma.
Anyone else? Your name and address, please.
My name is George Georges, and I live at 322 Bauman, okay, I'm on the south end. Couple of quick questions, okay. Surprise, Mr. Haberman, I guess he worked here back in, 2009? Right? And he left for some unknown reason, he decided to leave, okay. I think, now, how do you do your due diligence, okay, knowing that he left, saying that I just can't do this anymore, okay, and didn't give a reason why,
It was a sealed agreement
okay,
with the city council at that time.
okay, so how do you go about doing your due diligence in this case?
I actually went and asked employees that were here at that time, and looked at, talked to business owners, talked to staff that had been here during that time. Mr. Harris was actually on council during that time, and so he knew him as well. And I went back to the record and to look to see if there was anything in regard to unsatisfactory, and there was nothing there. And I guess the fact that Mr. Haberman's been in other organizations for the past 10 years and became highly recommended by this national organization, I wouldn't have thought that they would be willing to tarnish their record, and nor would he tarnish his record with that organization.
I understand he was working, you said manager for Huntington Woods also. Does anybody know that?
He's worked for a couple of them, whether they're intern
Frazier.
or what they are, I'm not sure. I think he was at Frazier, I don't have his thing.
Okay, and that brings up another question, okay, and it's a question I had asked last time when I talked with you, is how come the resumes aren't made available for people sitting here? So we can actually use resumes too, of what you're looking at, so we can follow along.
I don't know if we have a release from these
That's
people.
what we couldn't because of the release from these people.
I'm sorry.
We could not because of the relationship with those people. They did not approve for their information to be submitted to the public.
But they're applying for a public job, right?
They're not employed yet.
I did ask.
The other thing too, somebody here mentioned the word auditor. You have the auditors coming in?
Yes.
And what's the reason for that?
It's an annual audit that's done every year.
What was that fiscal year?
Pardon me?
What's the fiscal year?
July 1st through June 30th.
You have 6 months to complete the audit.
6 months from the year end? So
By December 30th.
they haven't started the audit for June, right?
Correct.
The end of the year. So they're doing what, 2017 or 2018?
2017, 2018.
2017. And then I got to kind of agree with a couple of the comments. I think they're kind of doing this ass backwards, okay? You're taking resumes without knowing what you want, okay? And then what you're gonna do is read the resume, okay, and hopefully they write a nice one so that it'll fill what you think you need, okay? And then what's gonna happen is you're gonna be back in the same position that you are without Mark. okay?
These people are only for 10 weeks. This is not a permanent solution.
Let me
at all.
tell you what's gonna happen in 10 weeks. What did you say the surplus was?
103,000.
That can be gone, okay? And oh, by the way, why do we have a surplus? What's the reason for the surplus?
I guess I'm not exactly sure how to answer your question.
Was it we reduced expenses?
It
Increased our income?
Increased revenue.
Okay. Now, is that because property taxes went up? No?
So there were a couple things.
We're not, in other words, we're not sure.
Well, no, revenue did increase slightly. It's very minimally, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's typically been like 2% over the past several years. What we did do was we were able to cap our obligations for pension contributions, which was really sucking the city dry in a lot of ways. And so we were able to actually get, it was something that was allowed by the state of Michigan. We were able to pursue borrowing the money so that we can fully fund our pension obligations today.
Did we do that? Did we borrow money?
Yes.
It's fully funded.
And that will save us millions of dollars.
So what we've done is we've deferred some money by borrowing, correct?
Well, that's, sorry, but that's something that a lot of municipalities are currently doing, is the sunsets on that particular law at the end of this year.
Okay.
And Mark did have a huge hand in extending it for municipalities through the end of this year.
So just so everybody can hear it. So there was a sunset on that provision, and they actually accelerated that sunset in legislation last year. And I know several of us, including Mark, reached out to our state legislators and spoke with them about not moving that sunset forward. And so they were able to extend that. And we had already entered into that process of applying for that loan. And again, I don't have the exact number in front of me. I can get it for you if you'd like, but it will save us millions of dollars over the next couple decades.
And part of the issue was the actuaries changed the rules. So the first year that the rules were changed, Clawson had to come up with an extra $50,000. And then the next year, it was an extra $100,000. And then the next year was an extra $150,000. And we were going to be bankrupt as a city if we kept on that accelerated payment plan and needed a way to be able to budget for it. And so it was.
So the basis is because of an operation of government, we got a surplus. Okay. I don't know.
And I want to say that Clawson had closed all that pension liability in the 90s. So we had, as a city, addressed that many years ago. It was just that these accelerated payments that the actuaries told us that we had to start making were going to be a problem for our budget.
So if I understood correctly what you're doing here today, okay, you said that you can look for a city manager, correct?
An interim city manager,
I'm
and
sorry.
then
Now-
be able to spend the time and get the right fit long-term. And it's not from these spots.
Does it not make sense, maybe you want to also, in this interim person, possibly see if he can do long-term?
I will say that when I asked that of many people, they said that you certainly could do that, but they discourage that because people that are available, if you look at people that are available today for an interim spot, you're actually limiting your options because there's people out there that may want to leave their current position and come to Clawson. And so by only selecting from your interim people, you may be excluding some of the best candidates out there by not looking into them.
I wish you guys luck, because I can guarantee you, you're gonna need it. Because there's not a lot of happy people on this side. So whatever you do, I guess we're gonna be watching. And we'll be here, and we'll smile, and you'll smile, see how we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this is my daughter, by the way.
Anyone else? Well, public discussion is now closed.
Madam
I
Mayor,
move we adjourn.
support.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Moffitt,
Yes.
Councilmember Albert,
Yes.
Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan.
Yes.
Thank you.